Hello, hello, and welcome to episode 69 of the Great Canadian Hockey Podcast. I'm James Parsi here with my co-host Aiden Sarah, and we have a lot of hockey to talk about. Not a ton of news. Feels like a lot of, I don't know, the kind of hockey talk you'd have sitting at a bar with your friend. It's a lot of bantery chat, and that's why I'm excited for this episode. But before we get to everything we've got to cover, how are we doing, fella? What is new in the world of Aiden Sarah? Tell me some stuff.
Oh man, I had a busy weekend. Rocky Mountain Classic in Calgary is a bunch of WHL prospects coming into a tournament. There were teams from kind of all over the place. Uh, Farthest away, I think, was Colorado in terms of south. I think the farthest we went east was Markham for this tournament. Super cool event, but man, it took a lot out of me. So this is a this is a late week podcast because I was on my feet yapping, calling games all weekend last weekend, and just needed just needed a little bit of time to recover here. But yeah, we got some fun stuff to talk about.
I hung out with a bunch of friends. I went to Victoria. I ate some good food, went to a couple good bars, pet a dog, fist bumped a random homeless guy about his comic book thing that he was rambling about. And and I took a nap on a BC Ferries carpet.
No, I do have a question for you.
Hmm.
So you bring up BC ferries
Yes.
and you bring up napping. It's not just me, right? BC ferries makes it as hard as possible to like be comfortable enough to nap on the ferries. That's what I've noticed. Is that something I'm reading correctly?
Aiden, how many times do you think you've been on a BC Ferries vessel?
That's why I'm asking you. It's
So I've probably been on one, I don't know. I've probably had 1,000 ferry trips in my life, realistically. Now that I think about it, maybe like 800 on the low,
so
like
is
1,000 on the high. And yeah, yeah, totally. You are not supposed to be able to have a comfortable sleep unless you don't care what anyone else thinks.
yeah,
If you're in
so
a vehicle, sure, you could sleep in your car, but if you care what other people think, the best you can do is one of those dozing naps where your neck snaps back over and over again as you wake yourself up.
so how did your nap on the ferry go?
Okay, so
How are
I
you
had
situated?
yeah, I we picked some of the like middle chairs by the gift shop and two of my friends were just sitting normally in chairs, but I thought it was a genius idea to make my duffel bag a pillow and just get real cozy on that dirty floor, that carpet that's probably never been vacuumed, or not never, but not anytime recently. And I didn't care. I didn't care at all. Nobody could really see me other than my head poking out because my friends had their feet up on the chairs in front of them, uh, like right in the aisle. So I was just kind of a head poking out as people walked by. I saw a kid point and laugh, saying, "What's that guy doing?" And I don't know, just giggled. The mom wants to explain that the kid being me, needs a nap after a weekend visiting a bunch of friends and drinking Shaft towers. You know the cocktail at Shaft? Got towers of them that you pump out the bottom like a nozzle. And yeah, I mean, after all that, I'm gonna need a nap. And you know what? I'll nap anywhere. It won't always be a good nap, but I'll pull it off somehow.
I don't, yeah, I do not think that in my definitely relatively small experience on BC ferries, I've ever found myself in a position where I'm thinking I could and I want to fall asleep right now because nothing is there's definitely like a plateau of comfort that you're supposed to be able to achieve and you're not supposed to be able to exceed that level of comfort on the boat. Um
Yeah, they don't want you getting too cozy. This isn't home. This is a bus with a restaurant and a bathroom and a gift shop. Okay? That's the whole thing. Oh, well, you get to go stand on the patio and look at the dolphins and whales. You know what? I don't care about the dolphins and whales. I've seen it all. Anything in that ocean that we're going to see as we're going by on the ferry, I think I've seen it.
it is a
I do
scenic.
love watching all of the tourists like run to one side of the boat. Oh my God, there's whales. Whales, this is crazy.
You know what it is? So everybody kind of has their own like don't understand tourist things, and yours is clearly the BC Ferries obsession with looking over the railing. You know what
Oh,
I never understand, man? Anytime I'm in Gastown, I
the
I
steam clock.
I genuinely think the people surrounding that steam clock have to be the most easily entertained people in the world. Like their parents must have like loved taking these kids out because these kids like there's no way you're actually interested in anything really exciting if you're stopping in the middle of Gastown because you want to take a picture of a clock. You know what I mean? Like I
I
do not
actually
understand that.
photobombed some Gastown steam clock photographers like a week ago.
Yeah, and that's totally valid because you didn't ruin like a good picture. You ruined a picture of an old clock.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I basically walked through and then as they were taking a picture and my buddy goes, "Oh, they're taking pictures. Let's go through." And then I did an accidentally terrible little moonwalk backwards back into the frame. I looked at them and went, "Hi." Waved my hands. Yeah, that was pretty good. Pretty damn good. I hope they
There's
enjoy
a
the photo. I hope they frame it.
there's a big record store kind of right across the street there in
I was
Gastown.
in there.
Yeah,
They have a lot of stuff.
that's usually why I'm so close to the steam clock so often if I'm down there is it's just on the walk from Waterfront Station to that record store.
Cool, I don't know, like vintage slash hype slash thrift shop right in there too. They had a lot of interesting old like sports jackets and apparel. Coolest thing I saw was Michigan Wolverines team jacket.
Oh, dude. See, and those kinds of stores and that kind of like jacket, that kind of apparel sounds so cool. But I know that that was a $400 jacket. Like,
I actually don't think it was really all that much. I think it was like $80. Like it was pretty
okay,
tattered and
wow.
old.
You know
Like
what?
it was in rough shape.
Yeah, no, I mean, in my hometown of Maple Ridge, the vintage stores that have more the trendy stuff, oh my God. Like the it gets unreasonably expensive. There are thrift stores that are just thrift stores, but the quality and the price are very, very similarly weighted as you go to stores that are truly just donation bargain bin stuff.
As soon as you see some hype beast designer stuff, I say hype beast designer because it's not like designer, it's like Supreme or something like that. As soon as you see that, it's like, okay, everything in this store is going to be overpriced. And I should probably dip, but I do usually stay and look around. I like to look. But yeah, I think that's about all on the update on our lives for now. I mean, I think I'm going to go see a couple hockey games in about a month. I was looking at the schedule in Vancouver, and they've got the Columbus Blue Jackets on a Friday and then the Tampa Bay Lightning on a Sunday. So I think I might get a ragtag group of fellas, put that game together. I don't know, maybe see a concert in the middle, make a weekend of it. Something special, gotta give yourself stuff to look forward to. But anyway, let's bridge back to that Miko Rantanen discussion. It's very timely that we talk about him because he had a natural hat trick, all even strength goals last night, I believe. Yeah, last night.
Yeah, man. Did you watch this game?
No, actually, I went to put it on my TV on my Sportsnet app after I got home from dropping my buddy off at the airport. And I've kind of got a bone to pick with Sportsnet right now because my Xbox's sticks don't work on the app anymore. They work on
Well,
everything else.
you and me and everybody else
Oh,
in terms of gripes with Sportsnet. Like a couple weeks ago, it was, and again, I'm sure somebody knows the day because there was this big WWE event going on, and the entire network was just not working. Like it wouldn't work on TV, it wouldn't work on the streaming. It was both hockey games they were showing at the time, which was what I wanted to try and watch, but the wrestling event too wasn't working, and it's worth mentioning, man, that as these Monday night Amazon Prime broadcasts continue to be good and well received, and as Sportsnet continue to have bumps in the road. Um, mm, I I know some people are not going to like to hear it, James, but I think this is the start of the NHL going to streaming, and Amazon Prime is currently obviously the leading contender. They got the Face-Off series. They're having successful national broadcasts so far this season, but
Okay.
everybody's just got to be prepared for that, I think. And yeah, what do you think? Do you think that's the march we're going to take into the next step of Gary's growing the game so that everybody with Amazon can watch it?
I think probably that's the eventual direction for a lot of things, NHL included, but I'm still stuck on the fact that a bunch of wrestling fans couldn't watch a WWE Monday Night Raw.
Yeah.
You don't want to stop a bunch of rabid wrestling fans. That is the last thing you want to do. You do not want to make an enemy of those people. Have you met wrestling fans?
Not to mention, I'm quite sure that the WWE Monday Night Raw technical difficulty that caused that blackout, that came maybe either days before or days after Sportsnet announced like a not
Yeah.
insignificant price bump for their streaming service.
Yeah.
Man,
And didn't they
like
say they're cutting the WWE too? Isn't
I
that a
think
thing?
they're not renewing the rights to broadcast it in Canada, so it will
Yeah.
eventually also go away. Yeah, no, dude, it's
So
it's
Sportsnet and Rogers have made an enemy of fans of the WWE.
well, and even just plenty of hockey fans have not been happy with the quality of the broadcasts, right? Like it's and again,
Oh, wait. I forgot to tell you. I tried to watch two hockey games on my Sportsnet app this past weekend, and it's skipping like a broken record.
okay, so that's happening on your Xbox.
Oh yeah, and on my app on my phone.
Huh.
Hmm.
That's interesting. I have this week had to turn off a Sportsnet broadcast and go to the less reputable websites with all the pop-up ads to watch some hockey this week as well. Now I'm used to doing that. Like I've always been a, a savvy enough internet user to find a stream of a game regardless. But Sportsnet being unreliable, like it's is it not the only option you have? Like, could you get ESPN Plus right now and watch hockey?
No, no,
Yeah, I
that's
didn't
in
think so.
Canada.
Like, again, I use my family's TELUS Optic login to access Sportsnet to begin with, so I'm not the one paying for it. But oh man, I would not be happy if I was paying for a service that was not working as consistently as Sportsnet hasn't been working. Not to mention the fact that it is the only viable option you have to legally watch hockey. It's not like
Aiden, you know what? We're also forgetting that this is the same thing that auto renewed me $275 without any prompt or anything.
Ooh, yeah, that doesn't help either. Oh boy.
Wait, how did we get here? How did we just have a Sportsnet Plus like smack talk session?
I
Which you
don't
know
know.
what
Well,
seems warranted.
yeah, I was watching Mikko Rantanen's natural hat trick on Sportsnet last night and it was working, which I was thankful
Nice for
for.
you. I'm
Yeah,
happy at least you got to.
yeah. Um, the comparison I was gonna make, James, and we can quickly circle back to Rantanen here for a second because I was watching that game and I was like, this is what Jaromir Jagr was before he jumped to the KHL. The Jagr I remember watching as like a very, very small child where like I couldn't really totally follow the play very well, but I knew that 68 getting the puck there meant that he was gonna take it to the net. And 96 with a puck last night felt like the same thing. Like he was all over the place. He was physically exerting his will on the game. Um, he he almost bullied his way into positions at times. And it wasn't like he was necessarily needing to physically battle for every inch, but it was almost as if nobody was even close to touching him. I'm thinking about that 2-2 goal. Like it's a simple play where Rantanen's coming in off the left wing and he cuts to the middle of the ice. He takes that pass from Makar. His speed, his power, his ability to elude people, like it looks like such a simple goal, but it's how he receives that pass and immediately protects the puck, and then the burst of speed to lose the guy. It is very, very fun to watch, and I'm sure that I'll hand the floor over to you, James. You can talk Rantanen, you can talk the Avs, but he again, I've loved what I've seen out of Kirill Kaprizov and Mark Stone, but he's just another one of those wingers that has just launched himself up into the like true, and he always was a true superstar, but he's he's stamping his authority as a top 10 player in the league without any shade of a doubt for me right now. And that's maybe being a little bit conservative for how good he's playing so far this year.
Yeah, I've always spoken very highly of him. I've always been a very big fan. I remember when he broke in with a 38-point rookie season, scoring 20 goals, and he didn't really have a massive role. I think he was playing second power play. The team was pretty bad. And Aiden, he immediately follows that up with 84 points in 81 games. That's a second season. Look at all of the guys we're talking about getting paid these massive contracts. They've never had a season half that good. I mean, or maybe they've scratched the surface on that. Maybe they've taken a little step further, but um, I want to say it feels like he gets better every year still, which is something that feels kind of rare to say about a guy who's 28. He just turned 28 years old at the end of October. And I mean, 22, 23, scored 55 goals. Absolutely freaking dominant. Last year, 42 goals, 104 points. So he's had back-to-back 100-point seasons, over 40 goals twice, one of those being 55. He has the numbers to back it up again this year that says, okay, this will be another season of sustained dominance. When you look at a guy's resume and his three straight 100-point seasons, usually go, oh yeah, that's probably a Hall of Fame worthy player. What else has he done? Well, ask people who have to play against him. Do you know how much of a menace he is in a corner or in front of the net? I'm sorry, but if I had to play against him, I would think he's the worst. Just like a bully on skates.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and
Dude,
he
he's lacing him up to come take your lunch money. He may give you a swirly while that's happening. Um, I don't know, man. I could say amazing things about him forever, but I truly think he's just another version of that modern day power forward. Like you could call him a sniper, you could call him a playmaker, you could call him a power forward. It's not bad defensively either at all, but it's because he is one hateful prick on the ice. Can I say prick? Is that a curse word?
well, it's there now.
Okay, yeah, I said it. Yeah, I don't think it is. I think we still get our clean title. This still wouldn't be explicit, but yeah, I just I think I want people who are unfamiliar with his game to go back and watch some Peter Forsberg highlight videos, and then I want them to come watch this, and then think about the fact that Joe Sakic's been in the front office. Don't you think he's kind of happy he's molded a Forsberg 2.0 on the wing? He's probably pretty damn proud. Yeah, as I said, I can't say enough great things about him. He's the kind of player you want on a team that is going to war. I don't really think you'd want to see him on a bad team. I think he'd be losing his marbles on the ice at people all the time. But you know what? I love the compete level. It's all part of the game. I've been projecting like high 90s in points for him this year, but over 100 is totally likely and not even relatively out of the question. I just think with all the forwards coming back in Colorado, some guys are going to get little ice time bumps and little ice time drops, and it's going to take a while to find chemistry again. But regardless, easy top five winger in the league.
Speaking of just an absolutely intimidating, menacing guy to play against, I want to talk Shea Weber because Shea Weber completely rightly is a hockey Hall of Famer. I'm so happy for this guy. This is a BC kid who second round pick and James, in terms of two-way defensemen that could punish you offensively, punish you with a body check, and that you were never beating in a one-on-one. Like Shea Weber kind of was the guy that I molded the perfect two-way defenseman around in my head, and I still kind of do to a certain extent, right? He's almost the bar for me. This guy was so dominant throughout his career. I'm obviously, he's one of those guys that you're gutted, never got the Stanley Cup. But what he played through to push as close as he did in Montreal, he's a multi-time Olympic gold medalist. Everybody that got in, I think, deserved it. Um, Colin Campbell was huge in the NHL's kind of transition after the lockout. You've got Pavel Datsuk, who is probably the best the best checking center in that I've ever seen play hockey in terms of just his ability to strip players of the puck. David Poyle's in, Jeremy Roenick's in, which I thought was very, very cool because he's a guy who has kind of been waiting for that call for a very long time now. Natalie Darwitz and Chrissy Wendell from the women's side. And so Weber getting in with his group, James, I just what do you remember Shea Weber being in terms of just the impact he had on every team he played on and not just that, but at the best on best level in the playoffs, everything.
So to take it away from what you said a little bit and kind of talk about my own thing, I think players full on feared
Yeah.
defending their net or getting in front of the net when Shea Weber would line up for a slap shot. He would get that full body and stick bend where it's like, I don't know how you're shaped like this, and then you move that way. Unless you saw him play, you're so confused about what I'm talking about. But that in a nutshell kind of explains how unique he is compared to defensemen of today, I think. Like, I think he was one of the last of a dying breed, where it's that physically imposing, defensively miles more than sound, and incredible offensive, like the whole package, the Pronger package, you know?
Yeah, and I think kind of you taking it to Chris Pronger's an interesting part of this because you can even you can take current NHLers and it rings true for Pronger, rings true for Weber that it's hard to find a guy that is these players without doing so in piecemeal, right? Like you think about, for instance, think about like Shea Weber. If I were to describe Shea Weber to somebody who is a new hockey fan, just I never saw him play as has only been watching for half a decade or so. Like you've got Jacob Trouba defensively and physically with the with Evan Bouchard's shot and he passed the puck even like maybe not to the level of a Roman Yossi, but at a very, very high level as well, right? And there's no real NHL defenseman, and that's exactly what you meant when you said he was the last of a dying breed. There's no NHL defenseman that really check off all those boxes right now. You know what I mean? Like um it's part of the reason why I was so excited about somebody like a David Jiricek because I saw so much Shea Weber in him, right?
Right.
Um and Jiricek specifically, we'll see obviously what ends up happening, but in terms of current NHLers, yeah, it's he was one that feels like feels like hasn't been replaced, right? In a certain way, like it feels like his absence, like he's going to be very noticeably absent from this Team Canada. You know what I mean? Like just that rock on the
Right.
right side.
I mean, I think we may have buried the lead a little bit here. Why are we talking Shea Weber right now?
Because the Hockey Hall of Fame class, that was just the first guy I went to. We've got
Right.
Datsuk, we've got Datsuk, we got Roenick, we got a bunch of other people obviously getting in as
Right.
well,
Okay.
but Shea Weber Shea Weber was the one guy off the top of the list that I was very hopeful would get in. Um, I thought he should have, but I was not confident the right choice would be made. So it's Shea Weber and co this time around, James. But in terms of guys like Weber, like Datsuk that we grew up watching, we're gonna see a lot of guys starting to be eligible over the next few years. So who are some of the other names that you got on your radar for Hall of Fame spots?
Well, man, I have to say it's absolutely loaded. If you consider a lot of the guys who have been inducted in the past few years, there are some locks here. I'll give you Zdeno Chara, Duncan Keith, Carey Price, Joe Thornton, Ryan Getzlav, Tuukka Rask, and then other guys who are now eligible as well, but they likely won't get in, but it's possible maybe one day. A Jason Spezza, a PK Subban, like um yeah, Dustin Brown, Keith Yandel, and Braden Holtby are all eligible now as well, but I don't think those guys get in. Um yeah, it's we've had this discussion a lot where it's the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of really damn good top end player. So I think past the first handful of guys, like I go like Getzlaff, um, Duncan Keith, Chara, probably Price, probably Joe Thornton. Those guys probably all go in. The rest
Yeah,
of them, yeah.
I would agree with you. I'd remove the probably on Price and Thornton. I think Price and Thornton are safely in the Hall of Fame. But those are the only guys that I would say out of that group that are going to end up in there. Yeah.
20 years ago, I don't think those guys get in though.
20 years ago, the points weren't going in the same way that Joe Thornton put them in the net, right? Like you look at the
True.
all-time
Good
scoring
point.
lists, and Thornton is a lot higher on those lists than a lot of guys that did end up getting in, right? And part of it was just longevity, part of it was the scoring was more when he was in his prime once the dead puck era kind of ended, right? Like he got those 2010s where he was just able to stockpile assists on those Sharks teams. Um, when you're looking at somebody like Carey Price, the one that I want to, or the category I'd point the attention to would be his peak, right? Like you not only didn't have and don't probably still have goaltenders that are this dominant in the NHL now. Like you think about mid 2010s Carey Price, you think about the 2014 team that probably was destined for a Stanley Cup if he stayed healthy. You think about the 2015 Carey Price that won the Hart Trophy. You think about how he was in the Sochi Olympics where he let in 3 goals, I think, in the entire tournament for Canada to win. Um, Realistically, James, Dominic Hasek 1990s, that's really the only comparable I have to that version of Carey Price in terms of like he was the best in the league. He was doing it at the big stages. He was performing well in the playoffs. He was the undisputed best goalie and he was winning Hart trophies, right? Like it's uh Carey Price by the numbers you look at him, they're impressive, but they don't tell the whole story. That's kind of what I'm trying to say with Price, right? Like
That's fair.
you almost have to have lived through his peak and again retrospectively recognize that you look at NHL goaltending as a position and between Dominic Hasek and Carey Price, I don't think there was anybody in that tier.
And you also have to look back and consider that they probably never put a good enough team in front of them. Not
Yeah,
one.
well, and that 2014 team that I referenced was, like at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure David Desharnais and Thomas Plekanec was your first and second line centers of that team. And nothing against those guys as players, but Stanley Cup winning teams generally will have have a little bit stronger of a a top end of their roster than that, right? So yeah, you make that reference to that. Really, he did everything he possibly could. The rest of it was somewhat substantially out of his hands.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, man. It's gonna be interesting to watch as this Hall of Fame class is put together. I always find it interesting to watch and pay attention to. I myself never watch the ceremonies. I might see like a YouTube clip or something on social media or something like that. But I encourage people to actually check it out because I think a lot of people are kind of in my boat there where it's I don't know, it's not something you really feel like watching on TV that much, but seeing the whole acceptance speeches and everything, I find it really interesting. So give it a go. Check her on out. I think where we go next is one Mr. Dakota Joshua is on his way back.
Yeah, it's it's 6:20 local time for me, which means I've got about an hour and a half on this Thursday night until Dakota Joshua makes his season debut for Vancouver. Uh, Joshua was a pretty massive win for the Canucks pro scouting when they got him out of St. Louis. Um, Back-to-back seasons of significant improvement in Vancouver, and he was diagnosed with cancer in the offseason. He's reportedly now cancer free and he's back to make a season debut tonight. So obviously, stick taps to Dakota Joshua. Um, this is the this is the kind of story that the Masterton Trophy's made for, right? Somebody who is able to fight fight through substantial adversity in order to return to hockey. So it's massive kudos to him. And again, by the time you're listening to this podcast, his first game will have already happened, but I'm very keen on watching him in his debut. And I hope that obviously him and the Canucks have a great game here tonight.
Definitely, man. Stick taps and kudos to him. We love to see it. Moving on to something a little less awesome. I believe there's a hit that you want to talk about.
Yeah, and again, just Vancouver market, it happening to a local player means that I was both hearing a lot and getting asked a lot about the Tanner Jeannot hit on Brock Besser because I'm very openly and obviously like the if if a player throws a very dirty check, like the NHLPA's job needs to be as much about protecting the guy who got hit as the guy that threw the hit. And so I'm often an advocate for longer suspensions. Tanner Jeannot got 3 games for this one on Brock Besser, and I had a lot of people asking me how long it should have been. I thought kind of in the 3 to 5 game range was good.
Right.
Jeannot comes a long way to throw this hit on Besser. If you didn't see it, he kind of it it looks like the collision isn't with too much force, but the injury to Besser happened because it was just straight shoulder to chin from Jeannot. And so that's where I think you have to punish it is in the body checks that do nothing but hit the head. That is expressly the body checks you want to avoid. So I'm glad that that was handed down with a suspension. But if you look at him, he's coming across the ice to lay a hit. I don't think he's targeting Besser's head. I think it's just a matter of it was an ill-advised check to throw rather than a maliciously dirty check to throw. My opinion is always that the very maliciously dirty checks, the ones that have little or no impact on the play and can't be excused as trying to make a play. Those are the ones that the lengthy suspensions have to go out to. Jeannot's, it was a bad hit. It should have been 5 in a game. It should have been the suspension. It was. I thought the people advocating for him to get the book thrown at him kind of maybe were the passionate Canucks fans that need to take themselves out of it a little bit and look at it objectively. But I
Totally,
think
man.
I think
Totally.
rare win for the Department of Player Safety in that instance.
I mean, yeah, you got to recognize your bias a little bit here and there, but I mean, I respect the passion. I like seeing people be passionate. Unfortunately, it blinds you sometimes a little bit. I've been guilty of that for sure. I mean, in terms of the length of the suspension, I think it was probably appropriate. I unless a player has a ridiculous past history, I don't like seeing it get above 5 games. I think that's kind of nutty. You know, like people see the red mist once in a while and just do something stupid. It happens. I watch it happen in real life. I watch it happen in nightlife. I watch it happen on TV, people's workplaces, in sports, everything. Sometimes you lose your cool. And I don't really think losing your cool should be the kind of thing that makes a player get suspended for this imaginary 15 games that some fans make up in their head.
Pivoting to Columbus, James, is where I want to go next.
Sure.
Dante Fabro claimed off waivers by the Columbus Blue Jackets from the Nashville Predators. This was a really interesting one. He's kind of been in trade discussions for a while because the fit in Nashville, like it was kind of always that they gave him the opportunity to be a top four defenseman and he just wasn't what they needed in that spot at any given time. His best season was 21-22. I think he had a solid foundation of points. It was the only season of his career, I think, until last year that he was squarely like a plus in the plus minus category. but he'd really struggled so far to start this season, and the Nashville Predators struggling as a whole. Like when your team is bad, when your team is really good, you can excuse one guy playing not very well, but when your team is bad, you are kind of in that lifeboat that's sinking, and you're looking to just cover any any of the leak points, right? And for Nashville, unfortunately, Dante Fabro ends up being the odd man out of that defense core. But he gets an opportunity here in Columbus, James, and the Columbus Blue Jackets, if you look, this isn't their first kick at the can with a somewhat highly touted mid-20s right shot defenseman. Like they just took a swing on Adam Boqvist that didn't work out. And so my question to you is, what do you see in Dante Fabro in Columbus?
Well, I've seen him play once. It wasn't when he was in the NHL. I saw him playing for the Penticton Vees against the Alberni Valley Bulldogs, and I left the game very unimpressed. I don't really like saying that about players, but I think I was unimpressed because I was sold really high on how good of a player this is. And then I noticed him noticeably take a few steps forward and seem to be an NHL defenseman. He seemed to kind of work out some kinks in his game, work on puck pickups, work on first passes under duress, work on puck retrieval after taking a hit. Those are huge things when you're a two-way defenseman. When you are not the guy, you need to be an ace at this stuff for your team to be successful when you're on the ice. Some of that seemed to trickle away a little bit over the past couple of years, and I saw a lot of Predators fans online, and I don't watch them all the time. I see some games. I've probably watched him play like 20, maybe 25 NHL games since he entered the league. Um, they were saying that it seems like he really peaked in his first half of his first season and hasn't learned anything new since then. Nothing is developed or repaired or been altered in his game since then. It's like, and what do we always say that a lot of other smarter than us people always say? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. I think the Predators coaching staff and management were probably just thinking, what the hell are we doing here? This is not going to work here at all. We've been trying this for 4 years now. Let's move on. So, you know what? I really understand the process. I really hope he turns it around. I would love to see it. I love a good redemption arc. And you know what? I never cheer against players doing better and improving. And I'm not personally knocking him here. This is just what I've seen, what I've been told. But what's another thing we say? Change of scenery can be very good for an athlete. So let's hope that works out.
Two extra things with Columbus Blue Jackets defensemen in relation to Fabro. One of them is um, benefiting Fabro in the it's Damon Severson because James, you look at Dante Fabro and if you're pondering the question like what's the best this guy can be, do you
Mm,
think that Damon C because I see Severson and I say, yeah, that's Fabro's ceiling. Like if Fabro at the
right.
age of 26 right now takes the step forwards he needs to take, if he improves the pieces of his game that require the improvement, I think you're looking at Damon Severson and you're saying, okay, that's the player that I believe you can become with Dante Fabro. Agree or disagree?
70-30. 70-30 agree to disagree. I'm not fully confident that that would be the exact style if he were to develop into like that competent of an NHL player, like that similarly ranked of an NHL player. But I think he could get to that level of player in general. It's
The other
still
s-
there. Like he's not 34, right? Like
the other side of the coin here too for Columbus, David Juracek and the Columbus Blue Jackets have reportedly had a tumultuous few seasons together in their relationship. Juracek pretty publicly asked for a trade when he didn't make the Columbus Blue Jackets opening night roster last season. He did eventually play his way up onto the big club. this is just more minutes taken away from Juracek on the right side of the defense. So James Jarmo Kekalainen drafted this guy. He was very high on this guy, but new GM Dom Waddell would not have the same tie to David Juracek as Kekalainen did. So do you think we're seeing potentially this Dante Fabro pickup be the start of a David Juracek trade?
Yeah, honestly, I think Yurichek's gone. Whether it's sometime next week or it's this coming summer, I think he is not a Columbus Blue Jacket when the 25-26 season starts. I think that's one of those things that's just like as good as sold. Um, you won't, you probably won't ever see a new GM come in and not swap out a couple of the prospects that he doesn't believe are going to be what the previous management team thought they were going to be. He didn't send his scouts to go check this guy out. He wasn't in the board meetings going, this is who we need. This is the future of our blue line. He's come in and seen, okay, what have you done for this organization recently? Because to him, this isn't a former top 10 pick. This is a prospect in their system. That's all he is at this point to that organization. I mean, I don't know if is that harsh to say.
Uh, Internally, I don't think so because I think the other thing that can't be ignored is the fact that again the relationship was fragmented, right? And he rescinded his trade request and he finished the season insisting that he was happy in Columbus. But at the end of the day, David Jiricek and Zach Werenski as a pair doesn't jive. Zach Werenski's playing good enough hockey that you're not touching his minutes. You're not touching his spot on the first pair. You're not touching his spot on the first power play unit. So that already, at best, if you're David Jiricek, the absolute best you can hope for is to play second pairing and second power play unit. And again, if Jiricek and the team hadn't had any of these bumps on along the way, I'd be a little bit less like cynical about the fact that he kind of has a cap on where he can achieve in Columbus. But again, he's looking at his situation in Columbus. He's saying, I think I'm a better defenseman than this. And they are putting a limit on my upward mobility. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's going to be the biggest thing with him is he's going to want to go and I think eventually will go somewhere where there's at least a somewhat clear path and a somewhat clear like, hey, you earn this spot is yours. And unfortunately for him, at the end of the day, it's fortunately for Columbus because I think Werenski's a stud. But unfortunately for him, like Werenski is so that guy, so that number one all around offensive dynamo that trying to pair Juracek with him wouldn't be beneficial for either player. And Juracek isn't going to take any of those minutes. You know, like we saw Luke Hughes last year, for instance, really step into the Dougie Hamilton shoes when Hamilton was absent. Luke Hughes this year absolutely not the same, right? Like it's part of it's part of opportunity and it's part of which players are in front of you in the lineup. So um I think Juracek, yeah, I think you and I are on the same page. I think his time is limited, but I think he goes somewhere where there's a path for him to be a top four PP1 guy, and he's gonna be his absolute superstar. Like he is very good, and he's still only 20 years old.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too late. And you know what? I want to see him get traded to the Sharks. It's the land of opportunity right now. You want a spot to roll with, run with, and show everyone what you can do on the right side of a blue line. Let me show you a good couple spots on that blue line that you could probably just take.
Oh, and James, you want to talk about like building a fantasy perfect defense pairing? Sam Dickinson and David Jiricek would be like
It is
a dream.
a hypothetical franchise mode one.
Yeah, it's a dream. Like it's a dream of a pair. It is like electric that pair of defensive end. It's so yes, absolutely. There are places, there are spots, there are opportunities that he and at the end of the day, that's the other thing too with Columbus is Waddell came in and he knows this guy was picked sixth overall. He knows what this guy's potential is. So is he looking at him the same way that Kekalainen did when he drafted him? No, he's not. But he's also not looking at him as somebody that, okay, I'm going to get a second round pick for this guy and be happy. He's going to want a somewhat substantial return. Don't forget that Dallas had to give up a first rounder to get Nils Lundqvist just a couple years ago,
Hey,
who
but
was,
at the time he looked very good still.
oh, I know, but not as good as Juracek, and not to mention that the deficiencies in his game that were there, like, have remained, right? Like it's worth saying with Lundqvist.
Yeah, I mean, change of scenery. It could end up being all we need to see, all we want to see. Moving on to another transaction. I mean, I guess the long-winded way we explained a transaction and a little tangent we went on, which I love. It was a great point, but we kind of started with a Fabro transaction. So when I planned it out in my head, these two went to. But the Pittsburgh Penguins have traded forward Lars Eller to the Washington Capitals for a third round pick and a fifth round pick. This will probably be the first of many moves for the Penguins this year. You'll see any of a good handful of guys that we've talked about in the past get moved on from. I don't really think any of their more notable lifelong Penguins are going anywhere. I think I can almost promise you that. Um, but I think I just want to leave the note that don't be surprised if more moves for them to take on the additional draft pick or two are made, whether that's weaponizing cap space and taking on a bad contract for someone else so they can make a move or get back to compliancy, or whether that is trading off someone on the roster. That's something that's going to keep happening. But more interesting point, the Capitals look good. And
Yeah, they do.
Rantanen acquired another depth forward. A depth forward that helped them to a Stanley Cup. That's kind of fun.
Lars Eller isn't going to do much for you offensively anymore, but he still is an excellent defensive centerman. And you add him to Nick Dowd, who hopefully we don't know. He got banged up yesterday, so we don't know if there's a timeline there yet.
He's
But
Brazilian. He'll be okay.
yeah, but you add Eller to Dowd, and I do truly think like Washington are funny enough almost building themselves up to compete in a playoff series, James, are they not? When you look at the moves they've made, when you look at the way they're playing, like it's very much a team that is ready to go into a 7 game fight with somebody. Um,
I don't think anyone's going to want to match up against them because
no
there's
one
the scare of an upset, and then it's looking at them going, man, these guys work hard.
Last thing I'll say about Washington, I think Spencer Carberry deserves a massive amount of credit. I've liked the way they've played under him the entire time he's been there, and I think he's getting the best out of everybody.
Totally. Moving on to one more piece of NHL news that we have written down for now. In my opinion, Calder favorite Matvei Michkov scratched twice recently. Those are health bombs. That is the good old healthy scratch. You go sit in the stands and think about what you've done and ride the bike after. That's what that is. You train hard and you work to get back in the lineup. Aiden, who is his coach and why is he important to this story?
Yeah, it's John Tortorella, who is kind of famously one of the more difficult to play for authoritarian coaches in terms of the players coach versus not players coach scale.
Hasn't he scratched all of Gaborik, Rick Nash, and Brad Richards in their careers?
That sounds correct, and there's definitely more guys that you didn't say that would also
Yeah,
fall into that category and
Nash is the
surprise
only
people.
one that I'm not 100% sure about.
Um, But James, like I'll tie it back kind of around to what Brad Marchand said about Jim Montgomery ripping into him on the bench.
Right.
This is part of hockey, right? If I'm not playing well enough, if I'm not earning my minutes, if if I need to be better, then the coach has every right to say it to me. The coach has every right to take the action to show me that. Um and Marchand's attitude was very much, listen, at the end of the day, we're professionals. This is part of the game. This is part of the sport. I wasn't playing well enough, and he told me, and that was okay. And I think that's where we're at with this Matvey Michkov thing too, right? Like he responded to it well. He has continued to, I think, visibly work on the things that Tortorella wants him to work on. Um, he needs to be better at 5-on-5. That is pretty clear. He loves to play on the power play because of the time and space, right? And I
Yeah.
think again, he's coming from the KHL. The arena, the rink size is bigger in Europe. So he's not used to the small rink. He's not used to the players being as big or as fast or as in his face as much. So that's I think the entirety of the learning process that he has to go through is just learn how to play with bigger players on smaller ice. You will have less time and less space, and you need to make decisions faster. That's it. So Michkov will continue to work on that. And again, because it's Tortorella, right? And because he has so often had so many very public spats with players,
Yeah.
I think that's why the attention's being paid to this. But I think it's
Well, and
something
also
that,
because he's the favorite for Rookie of the Year.
yeah. Oh no, don't get me wrong. Like the scratching of the player, I can see why it would have also raised eyebrows.
Just for context, Matvey Michkov has 12 points in 14 games. He's playing just shy of 18 minutes a night. Three and a half of those minutes being on the power play, as Aiden explained, and eight of his 12 points being on the power play,
Yeah,
which is an awesome number for that point in the season. Like that's he'd be on pace for over 30 power play points.
well, and if you watch Flyers games, like he's basically quarterbacking their power play once they get set up. Like he's playing in the middle of the ice and he's scoring from the top middle and he's distributing the puck really well. So again, it's they're clearly they're clearly very aware that this guy's hockey IQ toolkit is off the charts and he's excelling in that spot. It's just the again, it's the picking up the rest of his game to the speed of the NHL on the small ice. That's just going to come with time, I think.
Definitely. And he came back into the lineup after being scratched for 2 games in a matchup with the San Jose Sharks on Monday. Had a goal and assist. And Tortorella after the game goes, I wasn't worried about how he was going to respond. I wasn't worried about that at all. He competes. Mic drop. And one of the things that makes adds to the competes thing, um, he had a nice little scuffle with Celebrini. I don't know if you noticed that.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you're gonna want to check that out. It's not anything crazy, but it's fun. I like it. It was pretty cool. And yeah, he seemed to kind of respond well everywhere on the ice. But interestingly enough, I'm looking through the box score right now, and he is in the lineup for the Flyers against the Sens. Yeah, against the Sens, and he has just as much, if not more, ice time than most other important forwards on their team.
He's out right now on a 4-on-4 as I'm watching this.
Yeah, there you go. Lots of time and space. Let the kid go run. All right. That is all we have for NHL news today. Let's take it not down a peg, but let's take it to again. I still have to say amateur hockey.
Amateur hockey, dude. Indeed.
Oh.
All right. The long-awaited vote was last Thursday, while I was at the Rocky Mountain Classic. So
What
James and I, this is
long-awaited
our
vote, just in case we have some new listeners.
yeah, oh no, no, yeah, no, we're gonna talk about all the ramifications here. So for a long time now, um, kids in Canada have had to make a decision, and part of the reason why I talked about that tournament being what it is off the top is because I'm gonna bring it back around here. That tournament I was working, James, it's U15 AAA, right? So the whole idea is like the place is packed with WHL scouts. So WHL scouts are approaching these kids and asking them what their hockey plans are. These kids are 14 years old, right? So this was the time before where the kid had to or should have had a very solid idea already what his plans were in hockey. And if he made the decision, because again, if you're a very good player in this tournament, and let's say a WHL scout comes up to you, that WHL scout says to you, "Hey, if you want to come play for our program, I want to take you with a top three pick in the U15 draft this year. Well, you have it is on you to tell that scout, okay, well, is your plan to go play in the WHL? Because if it is, we're going to draft you with this pick. Well, that kid at 14 might say yes, but 2 years later, he's committed to this WHL team, and it's no longer it's no longer his goal. Now he wants to go play in the NCAA, right? He doesn't want to play in the WHL to try and get drafted. He would rather keep playing hockey, finish high school, and then go play in college. Um, Before the decision to commit to the WHL team, the decision to play in the WHL, which again, kids often made at 14, 15 years old, was entirely disqualifying to their NCAA eligibility because the second you stepped on the ice in a WHL game, you used to be considered a professional athlete, and the NCAA no longer deemed you eligible to play in their league anymore. As of Thursday, that is completely changed. We now officially 100%, it's been speculated on all year, but anybody in the CHL can now go play NCAA Div 1 hockey in the States. It is the best college hockey. The programs are the wealthiest, the atmospheres, the level of competition, the everything in Division 1 NCAA hockey is the best it can be at that level, at the collegiate level. So this is really, really good news, especially for Canadians, because this completely takes away what I view as a ludicrous decision to be asking 14-year-old kids to make, which is, do you want to throw away your eligibility to play college hockey to come play for this CHL team? It's a tough decision to put on anybody, let alone somebody who is, again, a kid, still wants to do everything they can to reach the NHL. And so their decision at that age could be so different than the decision they would have made in retrospect 2 years, 2 years after the fact. So I'm very, very happy for those kids and for those programs who now don't need to be concerned with having an opportunity taken away from them years down the line because of a decision they're making to play in, mind you, the best league they can play in at that time, right? So again, to me, these teenagers shouldn't be in the position where they're making these life-altering decisions. This keeps doors open longer. It allows players to play at the best levels without having other opportunities closed on them. This is a good thing. Lastly, this happened last Thursday. Over the past week, there's reportedly dozens of players who have applied to Hockey Canada for re-entry. So you wouldn't need to re-enter to go from the BCHL, the USHL, or the NAHL to go to the CHL. But if you were playing in one of those leagues and you wanted to go play in the CJHL, which is Canadian Junior A, or wanted to go play in or wanted to play for Hockey Canada internationally, you would need to reapply. So um, that to say that even now we're seeing a situation where yes, a lot of CHL teams are signing players. You're seeing Division 1 committed players leave Tier 2 leagues at a pretty high rate right now to go to CHL teams. But even even beyond that, those players wouldn't need to apply to Hockey Canada for reentry. So there's clearly more of an allure for these players, which again, in my opinion, the the development of hockey in this country works best when it's a bunch of parts of a whole. This is a step towards that.
Definitely, man. I think that was a good way of breaking her down. One of the big things that I kind of feel about it is I think we're going to get to a point where kids have no idea that this was ever an obstacle. 10 years
Yeah,
down the road, people aren't going to understand how hard it used to be.
yeah, no, absolutely. And it's gonna sound a little bit silly. So, well, what do you mean that I couldn't, I couldn't go play in the NCAA because I played in a specific Canadian junior hockey league, right? You're right that relatively, in retrospect, this will have seemed like such a long time coming thing and such like a we should have been doing this a long time ago thing. And I do truly believe that's the case and that we should have been doing this a long time ago. But I'm happy that we've arrived at it now.
Definitely. Well, I think that's all we have on that for now. Is it time to get to trivia, or do you have something else for us?
Oh, well, I talked about doing a best on best team Canada, and I have one ready. So we'll get to the other ones as the weeks go on here because we're gonna have teams announced in December. But James, I am gonna run through my team Canada, and I want your thoughts on this. Okay, how would you like me to break this down? Do you want me to go lines?
Yeah, go forward line by forward line.
Okay. My first, I think, somewhat bold take is on the first forward line. I've got Connor McDavid down the middle. That isn't it. I've got Sam Reinhart on his right. That isn't it. I've got Carter Verhaeghe playing left wing on that first line with Connor McDavid and Sam Reinhart. Verhaeghe's had a little bit of a sputtering start. Only 4 goals and I think 12 points in 16 games. But James, again, I talked about this on the podcast recently. I have a video out on YouTube where I talk about this for for 12 minutes straight. Best on best teams so often have success because of the pedigree of their players, because you have guys in important situations for their country in coming off of, think about Vancouver 2010 Olympics and how huge Jonathan Toews was to that team. Okay, how huge was Jonathan Toews in the playoffs for Chicago during those years? Sidney Crosby, likewise. You think about guys like a Corey Perry or a Ryan Getzlaf that had massive, massive games for Canada after they had won the Stanley Cup, right? Scott Niedermayer was a Conn Smythe Trophy winner, captained Canada to a gold medal. There are countless examples of the teams with the most pedigree in terms of guys who know how to win and guys who have been there before having the most success in these tournaments. So you put Verhaeghe and Reinhart with McDavid, the amount of playoff experience in the last 8 months between those three guys alone is astronomical. Verhaeghe clutch time and time again in the playoffs for Florida. Um, so even with a sputtering start, I've got Verhaeghe on the first line. Brad Marchand, Sidney Crosby, Nathan MacKinnon's my second line. Crosby and McKinnon, the Cole Harbor boys, it feels like a foregone conclusion that we're going to get these three together because Crosby and Marchand played so well together at the last World Cup. You have Nathan MacKinnon in there as well, who, James, like, Crosby and McKinnon are going to make each other so much better. And there's a chance that one of them is neutralized, but the amount the other is going to thrive with those two playing together, the amount of hockey IQ that those two players are going to be able to control the offensive zone with, like, and you put Brad Marchand out there as well, which is just another guy who has the pedigree, who has the winning experience, who has the been there before, knows how to do it. Third line, I think this is a really fun one. I have dreams about Mitch Marner just ripping passes onto the tape of Connor Bedard, man. I think Marner and Bedard is potentially a lethal offensive zone connection. And I think putting Braden Point in between the two of them completes that line really well. Again, it's
I could
it's
see that.
it's a mix of energy, playmaking, and goal scoring all around. Marner's such a good passer, and Bedard can finish from anywhere. My fourth line is probably the one I struggled with the most. There's Lexi Lafreniere, Mark Stone, and Robert Thomas is actually what I have on this fourth line right now.
Robert Thomas gonna be healthy in time?
That's the one I don't know. Nick Suzuki and Mark Scheifele are the other two guys in for this spot where I've got Suzuki, Scheifele, Thomas being fourth line center, 13th forward, and then the guy that gets cut. So we'll see about Thomas's health. But again, Suzuki has been really good in Montreal all year, even though the team has been struggling. He's been good on both sides of the puck, and Mark Scheifele's been Mark Scheifele. I could totally see him being the 13th forward because to me, that's the kind of guy you want in that spot. 13th forward very often has to
He
come
could
in and
play anywhere
play.
in their lineup too.
Exactly. If it's an injury to somebody in a top six role, if it's an injury to somebody at the third line center spot, if it's an injury to somebody literally anywhere in the lineup, Mark Scheifele has the capability to fill that spot. So,
Except for
um,
goalie.
yeah. So I've got Suzuki and Thomas kind of in that fourth line spot just because of Robert Thomas's health. We don't know where it's going to be at, but I actually think Scheifele's the perfect 13th forward no matter what because you need him to, you are going to be able to use him in any spot you need him. I struggled with the bottom of my defense, but the top four to me are super obvious. Devon Taves and Cale Makar, first off, are your defense pair. And then the second pair to me is also a slam dunk. Josh Morrissey and Alex Pietrangelo have both been so freaking good this year. They've been so good, both sides of the puck. And to me, like you have a defense pair, again, literally capable of anything you ask them to do. My third pair is interesting, James. I've got Travis Sanheim with Noah Dobson.
Interesting.
I struggled a lot trying to fit Mackenzie Weegar into this team because I like Mackenzie
Or
Weegar
Shea
a lot.
Theodore.
Shea Theodore's my seven, and I will accept that if Theodore goes in for Sanheim to the six, that's more than an understandable decision to make. Travis Sanheim to me penalty kills better than anybody on this team and anybody that I left off. That's the biggest thing for me.
Hmm.
Is you always need a guy to 4 minutes left in the game, you're up by one, and you just took a penalty. You need a guy who you know is going to do the right thing in any situation. So, to me, Noah Dobson, again, sky's the limit for him as a player. Still young, still inexperienced. I think having a veteran rock like Sanheim beside him turns that into a very good pair as well. Theodore's my number seven. Again, I'd be more than happy with him getting in for any of those six. He's a very usable defenseman in any one of these contexts. He even plays the right side a lot too, which is another useful asset to have because Noah Hannafin and Alex Pietrangelo play together on the first pair, LDRD, and then Theodore plays the right with McNabb on the second pair in Vegas most of the time. So much like Mackenzie Weegar, actually, who you have the ability to play lefty or right D, Theodore can do that pretty seamlessly. Aiden Hill had a huge bounce back game. I've got Hill, I've got Binnington, and I've got Logan Thompson as these three goalies. Stuart Skinner right at the top of the year, I thought maybe. Man, James Stewart Skinner has not been good in the last couple of weeks. He's fallen right off my radar. Binnington and Hill both have been shown flashes of just being awesome and then had terrible games. Again, the pedigree of those two guys, their experience in winning the big games when it matters, I'm taking that experience in. Logan Thompson has been solid as well. I am probably a bigger Thompson fan than the average casual hockey fan, though. That's my Team Canada. Any massive glaring holes, omissions, mistakes, anything that you would substantially change?
Not necessarily. I I don't think they will go Travis Sanheim, but I understand and respect and agree with the approach. Like that makes sense to me, but I don't think they'll do it. And I have the same three goalies. To me, not in the same order. Like to me, Binnington's the surefire starter. But I mean, some people still have Samuel Montembeault in the mix. If he's really hot for a month, then that's a thing.
He would
Uh
need to start getting hot now again,
yeah,
like especially because Montreal have fallen into last in the league, right? That doesn't
yeah.
help that look at all.
Yeah, totally. I also don't know if Laugh has been incredible enough so far to be a lock.
Yeah, I agree with you for sure. I think Mark
Especially with a
Scheifele.
lot of guys who could play on a fourth line for that team, who
Well,
I think have more complete games as of right now.
I think Mark Scheifele fits that mold too. That was part
Totally.
of him being that 13th forward was thinking, all right, if Lafreniere is starting this tournament, he looks over his head. Absolutely put Scheifele on that fourth line with Suzuki and with Stone or with Thomas and Stone.
Right, right. Yeah, I was just thinking like if say Laugh doesn't get into that tournament.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely.
And like I don't know what I've seen from Bedard this year as well that's made me go it can compete best on best in a 3 game tournament. I don't know if that's a lock for me right now at all. In fact, I don't think I have him on the team as of right now. I think last year I did, but right now I don't. And I think Shifley is smack dab right in there. I don't think Robert Thomas is going to be ready. I think Suzuki will be on that team.
Yeah. To
So
me, it's one
for-
or the other at
yeah,
4C. Yeah.
yeah. But if Robert Thomas was there, if he was healthy, he would be 100% lock.
Yeah. He's a good player, man. Dylan Gunther and Wyatt Johnston were two guys that I so badly thought, let's go, let's
Not
earn that
there. It's
spot.
not there.
It's definitely not there yet this year. Gunther, right off the hop, looked a lot more likely than Johnston, but he's fallen off the pace a little bit. Um,
I think those would have been big stretches. If those were on your list, I would have had more to say.
yeah, well, and again, the sample size so far this season, they simply have not played good enough to be on those teams, no matter how much I love them. Um, okay.
Well, Aiden, it ain't the Great Canadian Hockey Podcast without a couple great games to play, and I have a new one for you. One round, because I believe you have some for me as well.
Yeah, I liked your like this or that. That was a great poll, James, because not just was it like fun, but it was very niche and nerdy enough that you pulled like specific playoff series versions of these players because I was all over that. So I got a this or that for you, except because it's me. I got it through a World Junior lens because it's
Of course,
officially halfway
typical.
through November and it's time to start slowly
Actually,
talking that
not
tournament.
officially halfway through November. It's the 14th right now.
How many days are in November? This episode's
30.
dropping on the 15th. Come on. Come
Yeah,
on.
but you're
Be
talking,
current.
and it's not there.
Be current with our listeners. Okay, let's have it.
Okay. You going first?
No, you can go first.
Okay. All right. So I actually have a completely different game for you after you just finished talking about this one. I don't know if you remember a board game from when we were kids that you would see in Walmart called Guess Who?
Of course, yeah.
Well, basically, I will have a player predetermined, and I will be giving you a maximum of six facts about this player. Two of them you'll be given off the hop. And it's a maximum 4 points. Every fact I give you after that makes you lose a point. So, our first fact, this player put up 242 goals, 352 assists for 594 points in 790 NHL games.
Is that one fact or
That's one fact.
Okay, okay.
Uh, Number two, this player had the most goals for his specific organization before the age of 23 until just 2 weeks ago. Now, let me know if you have any thoughts. I'm going to say you have, I would give you like 1 to 2 guesses per fact.
That second one is the one that I need to focus on here because I feel like I did just watch a game where a statistic like points before a
Oh,
certain
yeah,
age.
yeah, yeah. This popped up. This was
Yeah.
all over socials and it was a graphic. Yeah. If you got like if you had just like clung to that one little memory that you saw, this was probably going to be the easiest question ever. But I was kind of banking on you not remembering it.
Yeah, no, I know. And 242 3 it's a high number of points in a somewhat low number of games, which is also
Yeah.
screaming at me like this is like this is a KHL defector or something.
Let me know when you're ready for another fact and to surrender one of your maximum 4 points.
Oh. Yeah, you can give me a third.
So these obviously these extra facts, they range from obviously the ones at the start aren't going to be as helpful as the ones at the end. So this player never won a Stanley Cup.
It's like what game was I watching when that happened?
See, that's
Like
the big kicker. Like I said, it's
what
one that I was
was
hoping you
it?
couldn't figure out. Aiden, for those listening, how much are you struggling right now? Because it's okay to admit that you don't have any idea whatsoever and ask for another hint.
The hurdle is that again, like that hint about very recently having a goals record for a franchise snapped. it's difficult because now I'm trying to figure out who snapped the record for which team and then which player it would have been that had their record broken. And I don't know if I'm barking up the wrong tree to be thinking Tim Stützle in Ottawa was the guy that just broke the record. And if that's the case, does is this enough points to be Marian Hossa? uh, it, I don't think it is, but he also won the Stanley Cup in Chicago, so that would nullify it being Marian Hossa. I'm trying to think about other guys off that Ottawa team. I know Danny Heatley never won a Stanley Cup. He probably would have been around those numbers and points again. 242 for a guy that I think had multiple 50-goal seasons, though, seems low.
Would you like another hint?
Yeah, yeah, I'll take another hint.
This player was traded twice. One of the two trades was a one-for-one swap.
Okay, so not Danny Heatley, thank you. Because he was traded at least four times. He was in a one for one for Marty Havlat. I remember that, but uh, that was one of more than two times he was traded for sure.
Right.
Okay, okay. I had Alexei Yashin flash through my mind, but
He is not Alexei Yashin.
yeah, and I'm pretty sure that trade that sent him from Ottawa to New York was for, if I'm remembering correctly, at least Chara and Spezza, which
The
is a
draft pick used for Spezza. Yeah.
okay, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because
And I
Spezza,
think there were a couple other things in there.
yeah, Spezza was that one of those like Bo Horvat ones where it was draft day? I think it was a draft day trade. Because
I don't recall when it was,
yeah,
but
when you have trades within the week of the draft, my attitude is like you at least know reasonably enough who's going to be there that you're trading for a guy, right? Like,
it
like
was Chara, the first overall pick, and Bill Muckalt.
you know why I think I can't move on from Danny Heatley?
Why?
Because it's the Martin Havlat. Like, when did he go? Because he was in Ottawa, but he definitely was not traded. Like, the Heatley trade was after both of them were long gone from Ottawa.
Right.
I also remember him having a hard fall off after that trade.
Mm, right,
So
right.
that would explain the numbers being what they were. He wouldn't have won the Stanley Cup. And again, the Danny Heatley one I know was one for one. Was it Havlat? Is that who you're talking about?
Indeed, it was Martin Havlat, and you said his name earlier,
I
and I
did.
made a
Yeah.
straight face.
Yeah. Well, because again, it was the Heatley trade that was one for one that offseason,
Yeah.
Minnesota San Jose. Okay. So how many points did he have in Ottawa as a kid?
Uh, 42 points, then 50, then 59, then 68, and then 16 in 18 before being traded to the Chicago Blackhawks, where he piled up points, and was traded a year before they won the cup again. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember him playing for Chicago against Vancouver in a playoff series one time. I do remember that. Okay, that was strenuous, and I can't believe that I like said it and just was like, okay, I'm gonna keep talking about other guys now. You know why? It's because I was talking about Heatley being in Ottawa, but the Havlat for Heatley trade had nothing to do with the Senators, so
No, no,
it was so
exactly.
far removed from Ottawa that it didn't click because I yeah. Well, okay.
All right, what do you have for me?
Well, I have a same thing you gave me.
This or that?
Yeah, I have this or that based on recent World Junior performances. I'm going to start somewhat basic in terms of a couple guys who did pretty similar things in somewhat similar circumstances. 2021 bubble tournament in Edmonton, the US. I'm going to ask you to put that Trevor Zegras, who I will remind you, tournament MVP.
Oh,
I
I
believe,
remember.
yeah,
Well
I
aware.
think led the tournament with 19 points, definitely scored in the gold medal game, might have also had an assist in the gold medal game. I am going to put
Playing
him
with more swagger than a man who just won the lottery.
up against the following year's version, which was a year and a half later because it was in the summer of
Hmm.
Mason McTavish for Canada. Again, literally, I'm going back to back World Junior MVPs because
Right.
Zegras was in 2021, McTavish was in 2022. And these two guys, despite the fact that they had a similar number of points, both won the tournament, had wildly different tournaments. So, which version is your winner between those last two?
Okay. I have to say, it's probably going to be an unpopular opinion because I don't know if we look at that McTavish World Juniors the same way without him stopping the puck on the line and that being such like a that's like a career highlight moment. He changed the outcome of the game, of the tournament, and of these guys' careers. That career highlight happened because of him stopping the puck on the goal line. I know he had a great tournament. I just don't remember it feeling like sustained dangerous dominance every single game, every single shift. Whereas every time Zegras got anywhere near the puck that tournament, it was like, oh God, what's happening next? It was the kind of thing where that tournament, if I'm cheering against Canada, I don't think I'm as scared of McTavish as I was scared of Zegras watching Canada play against them, against the States. I do take Zegras just on the danger game to game, shift to shift, and for probably the coldest moment in World Junior history for me, that look as he skates by the Russia bench.
All I'll say, James, they played really bad in that game, and he did that at the end of a game that they were losing and lost.
Yeah, totally,
Um,
totally. I don't care. I still thought it was ice cold.
Yeah, so that kind of reminds me a little bit. I don't know if you saw it the other day, Michael Carcone going off the ice in Utah, like giving the fans like a yeah, let's hear it, hands up in the air after he had just beat the piss out of Jack Drury with Drury's gloves on. Like Drury didn't even get his gloves on, and Carcone was just hammering away at him, and then he
Oh,
celebrated winning the fight after that same energy with the secret celebration against the Russians, where it's like, okay, yeah, you scored. You know what? Very quick aside, I'm not going to go on a huge tangent about that. The Americans don't win that tournament without that game against Russia. They played bad. Spencer Knight played bad. It was a wake up call. They turned around and they were absolutely unplayable. They played six of the most solid, dominant World Junior games after that one against Russia. So I'm not just criticizing that game or that team because that was a turning point. It was literally game one. They played horrible. And then, oh my God, was that team ever unbelievably good from there?
oh, they were stupidly good. Stupidly. But I think that's all for our game section today, isn't it?
It is. Did you watch a movie this week?
Did I watch a movie this week? I didn't watch one that I've never seen before,
Okay.
but I watched a movie that I haven't seen since I was a child. A
Hmm.
movie that everyone listening to this podcast probably forgot existed.
Okay.
This movie was a blockbuster back in the day, aimed at children. I'm talking about Herbie Fully Loaded, starring Lindsay Lohan and Michael Keaton. It
Can't
was
say
a
I've seen it.
reboot of a popular kids movie franchise about a Volkswagen Bug that was a race car and it was alive. Couldn't go and talk, but did little car things to communicate, and the headlights were eyes. So they rebooted this movie, and like Michael Keaton, big deal in the early 2000s still. Lindsay Lohan, pretty big deal at the time. And like Justin Long and a handful of other people were in it. It's extremely funny and like it's got like heartwarming, hype you up moments. But the one thing that threw me right off, and I'm not saying threw me off in a way that I was offended or bewildered and shocked and livid. Like that's not how I was feeling. I was just like, whoa, they put this in a kids movie. Um, at one point, two of the main characters are engaging in what appears to be and is heavily suggested to be some adult activity in the back of a car. That car is Herbie, the car that's alive. And as it's happening, he starts like nodding his head, like, yeah, yeah, this is happening in my doors. And I was just sitting there thinking, there's no way I would have picked up on this as a kid. But if I did, I think I would have thought it was either awesome or hilarious. But as a kid, you're not picking up on that. You're
No,
like,
definitely
they're
not.
happy and the car's happy. Cool. But yeah, it was a
Just
fun
remind
rewatch. I would say give it a go.
that reminds me of this scene in do you remember the movie Monsters versus Aliens?
Oh, yeah, very vaguely. That's like an odd fever dream.
Okay, I've got a DVD copy of it within arm's reach of me right now, so when you come visit, we can watch it. But, there is a scene early in that movie where like similar just car innuendo that again I watched it years later being like, "Oh yeah, right."
Yeah.
That's funny. I didn't get that as an 8-year-old. Very different movie from me this week. Have you ever seen Dallas Buyers Club?
I've always had it on my list. I've heard Jared Leto's performance in it is top, 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 top notch.
It is. Matthew McConaughey was very good as well. Jennifer
Yep.
Garner was very good as well. All three of them play their roles like very convincingly for what it was, right?
I
Because it's
was
a
told that the movie makes you feel that the roles were written for them.
yeah, oh totally. And that's a, that's especially considering this is a based in truth biopic about this guy Ron Woodruff. That's even more impressive, right?
Right.
Because it's it's not somebody fictionalizing a story and then building a character for an actor. Yeah, McConaughey was great as the leading man. Jared Leto's character got you to feel so much sympathy for them. Jennifer Garner was good in every scene she was in. Um, for me, the biggest thing with this movie, the stakes were very real without there needing to be a lot in your face about how real the stakes are, right? I think that was my favorite part of this movie because again, my favorite movies generally, right? Like I'm looking around, my favorite movies are like my I got a Pulp Fiction poster on my wall, right? Goodfellas, I just rewatched that too on Crave. No Country for Old Men is leaving Netflix. If you haven't seen that, you got to watch it before it goes. But I rewatched that too. And again, the thing about those movies is you get invested in them because the stakes are so obvious and in your face the whole time. What I loved and appreciated about this movie was how invested I was in their stakes without it being the same, intensity of a war movie or the same intensity of something that's happening in an action piece, right? Like you are just as emotionally invested in these characters and you're just as emotionally invested in the stakes of their story. And I thought being able to pull those emotions out of me in the context of people from Texas needing medication in the most Cole's Notes version I could give you. I was very impressed by that. Yeah.
Very cool. I will move it up the list because it is one that's readily available to watch and yeah, I've kind of always had it on my mind. It's one of those 10 that like I know I would like and I know that I can watch, but I just keep not clicking on it for some reason. So yeah, I'll move it up
It
the list for sure.
that was it for me for a long time. But after my tournament in Calgary was over, my dad came down for a couple of days because he had work in Edmonton. So him and I watched it last Sunday together because we're always usually looking for some good ones while he's here.
Nice, man. Well, good to hear. I think that's all we've got for this week's pod, episode 69. Nice. I don't really think we have anything else in the tank. Next week we will fire up questions again. If Aiden doesn't do it, I will do it. I will actually pull my weight for once. But we thank you all so much for listening. So without further ado, let's roll that outro. Thanks, guys.